entirely got the leave button got clicked. Okay, I'm starting to share my screen also. I've started a recording that way. I'll start sharing. Okay, so now what we have done is we have been going through each of the different types of topic, all the different areas as part of my overall understanding about the entire aspects on the incident handling and security aspects. Now, as a incident handler, one thing that we want to spend today is also understanding some of the different types of accesses that could be there, with respect to once you are trying to access your data sets, once you're understanding, understanding these different types of components, right? So we will start with understanding different types of how you are basically able to maintain your accesses, how you're able to highlight, how based on the data sets that you have, can I start getting accesses to this data which I am not entitled or I want them unwanted access to it. And then I can start looking into the critical or sensitive data around it. So what are different ways, what are different means that, I would be able to use them and would be able to go through them that will help me in this entire approach. So what I'm going to do is very interesting day today that we're going to do because very quite interesting number of ways we will see that how we are able to manage and the access into your different data sets, right? So the overall ways there are, different ways, different types, different kinds that we're going to see how you will be able to, for access, manage the access, user access for different data sets, right? So we'll see a couple of different types, different examples, and, what are these different components, how and what are some of these things that we're going to look into. So within that, what we're going to do, we'll start first with the topic of malware, and we'll see what is malware, what are different categories of malware that you have, right? Then we will also look into Trojan horses. We will also look into the different ways how you can do backdoors and traits we can do. Then we will also treat what are rootkits and what are different types of rootkits that you have with user mode, kernel modes that you have. We'll see that. We'll see the different how you can start, defending against some of these aspects, right? So we'll see some of the different tools and different solutions and the space that can start helping us in this entire, looking into these aspects and will start telling me or giving us those informations. Okay, so that is something a very interesting kind of topic that we're gonna look into today. What are these different ways of accesses that is there, right? Let's just start with malware. Right now, in very simple terms, malware is just like you can say a short form for malicious software. So any kind of malicious software, or let's say, for example, an intrusive software, you can say, wherein it is intentionally being designed, so like, for example, it want to cause damage to my machine, to my server, right? The entire systems for that matter, right? So that is what your malware will be trying to do. So this is a kind of an intrusive damage. There is a kind of, there is an intention, there is an intent for which I want to do. So that will get categorized on uh, definition of malware. But now, supposedly, if there is no intent, supposedly it happens sometimes that that damage might be happening, but there is no intent, because I had unintentionally, had managed, damaged my machine servers and all. So then that is possible that that intention was not there, then it get categorized as a software bug. It was an issue in the system and all, which was, I didn't had that intention of destroying it, but because of some unintentional damage that has happened, right? That is more like your software bugs, right? So this is primarily a main difference that you'll see, about your software bugs versus your, you know, the malwares where, here there is a intent, here there will not be intent, right? Similarly, this malware, a lot of time, you will see that gets confused with sometimes with virus, with sometimes with the other things, right? Now, primarily, if you see, how do you basically differentiate them, with respect to malwares and all? So, malware primarily you can consider is more like an umbrella term, right? It's a more an umbrella term that will be including all your online threats, It could be including viruses, it could be including spywares, it could be including adwares, right? Ransomwares. So it's a kind of a umbrella term that you can say different types categories will be there, and virus will be one type of malware specifically, right? So for example, there is a specific where there is a specific component that we want to do. Let's say for example, it's a more like we are now creating a kind of a program, right? That will not require any kind of a human intervention, So we'll see like, for example, there is a kind of, let's say, for example, you might receive an email, right? Or some people will think that, if they are getting an email containing a virus in that executable file, then the system will be automatically infected with it. However, this is not exactly what it is, That machine to become infected, the user will have to open this executable file. It will have to run this file, save it, there, because of which it might this might virus might be contained in that attachment. So this is where you will see that a virus would be a kind of a malware, but it's a kind of a program that will be required any kind of a kind of specific components that would be there, right. So you can see that uh, this is more like a piece of code you will be able to see that will be getting inserted into the application that will be getting executed, and it will be once it is inside, what it will do is it can start stealing your sensitive data, right? So stealing of sensitive data is something that it can do. Then it can also launch a denial of service attack, right? So denial of service or distributed denial of service attacks and all, it can try to execute this. Or let's say, for example, even ransomware attacks and all, also it can be able to execute it, right? So primarily, they would be spreading through this, obviously, file sharing or email attachment downloads and all. But and this is very similar to the viruses in human body. A lot of viruses, we gets entered our human body, right? But what happens is they might not be active. So normally you might have heard about this, right? The viruses in its original state, they're just all around, right? But what happens is, like for example, these viruses, they are very much dependent on the host, as in like the on host on which they would be they would be becoming active. Like for example, if there is an animal virus which is there in your body, maybe that virus might not become dormant because the host, you are not the right host for that virus. Or for example, you might have heard about when COVID happens, the animals were not infected by the COVID vaccines, the COVID virus, because they were not dying, because that the virus was primarily, we were human body was the host. So similarly for these viruses also, these would be remaining dormant. Like for example, they would be shared on the attachments and all, but unless and until you activate them, they will not be able to replicate itself. They might not be able to spread across itself, right? So that is where viruses is something, that's the reason, that's what they say, that even when it comes to these viruses, you have to be one important way how you can stop the viruses from spreading is just by avoiding any kind of a download, any kind of an attach and those kind of components. So that is where viruses primarily plays a very important, it's very important to understand. So one of the very important ways where organizations largely focus is primarily with respect to the different learnings and their different, trainings that they would be doing, right? So that will help in making them understand. So that is one thing that you will see. And so what are the different types of viruses that are there? You can see what are these different types of viruses. So you have, let's just use another page. So different types of viruses they exist. One of the very common type of virus that you have is first one, which is your macrovirus. So macrovirus is where, this could be a virus that would be executed or infected using some of your macro commands. Like you might have heard about Excel macros and all, right? MS Word, MS Excel and all. They have this, macros that gets executed, a sequence of automation steps. In Visual Basic and all, we create these macros. So those could be. So macrovirus is one type of virus that you can think of. There is a boot sector virus that you can think of. So boot sector virus is every time the system will be getting started at during your boot, machine boot or machine startup, this will, get in on the boot sector of the hard disk. It could be there on my boot during my boot. So that is your boot sector virus. On the specific on your hard disk, there is a boot device. There is a specific space that is beyond primarily a boot space. So this kind of virus will be impacting that specific space which has your boot files, right? Then you also have the stealth kind of a virus. So this stealth would be trying to attempt, they will try to hide from any of your softwares and machines. So they will be working in hidden mode. So you might have heard about this, the stealth mode, which a lot of these army officials and all, there are kind of operations that happens, right? So they will be hidden and they would be running those operations in a stealth mode. So this is what is your stealth mode, where you will try to hide, you will try to remain hidden, and you will be executing this. That is in the stealth mode. Then you also have the polymorphic kind of mode, polymorphic virus. So what happens in the polymorphic viruses? So that is you have the concept of polymorphism. Like so polymorphism, it's a morphism that normally these viruses happens. So what happens is it keeps on changing, right? It keeps on evolving, right? So this polymorphism is where, the original code, what you have is it's a more of in the encrypted kind of side. So it would be encrypted, there's an morph logic that happens, right? And this would be useful for evading, let's say, for example, signature-based detections and all, you know. So there is a concept of polymorphism that would be used, that would be useful for the signature-based detection. Now, based on that, the polymorphism will take care of, the creating signatures based on that code, and it would be keeping on propagating across them. So that is where another way of virus that you have. You also have another type of viruses which are metamorphic viruses. So metamorphism or changing the state, right? So it has the ability to change its code, right? Dynamically it keeps on changing its code, lines of code, and based on that, what happens is based on the host, it can change its line of code. It can change the locations, right? Which is the systems that it will be it will be infected and all. So making the detection quite difficult, right? So that is another kind of a metamorphic kind of a virus that you have, Then you also have another kind of virus, which is your multi-party multi-party virus, where what it will do is it will try to combine different functions. So this multi-parted functions viruses will try to combine different functions. It will try to, because of this different types of functions it would be using, it can help you to attack different other files, different combinations. So it's a kind of a combination of two or more viruses together. You can have it. So, it becomes a more complex kind of a thing because at one point you can have a kind of a multiple of these combinations together that can, you can start using them right together. So one good example about this viruses was somewhere in 2010 where Stuxnet was a very popular virus that happened. So that was primarily being developed by the US and, Israel governments. They primarily together, they created this virus. They wanted to disrupt the entire Iran's nuclear program, right? So together across these two countries came together and they developed this Stuxnet virus. And what they did was they created this USB thumb device, a USB thumb drive, and they wanted to target. So Iran's nuclear program was using Siemens Industrial Control System IC program. It was using the industrial control systems of Siemens. So what it does is it wanted to bring it down completely, right? So around 20,000, 20K plus, computers were being infected with this, and half of your one-fifth of your Iran's nuclear program was being hit. So that was a kind of a virus that these this that was a kind of an impact that this virus actually created, right? So like that you had a lot of examples or a lot of these viruses that happened in the past, that will be, that impacted or created a lot of different types of, issues that happen. Right. So some of these, the viruses, other viruses that you might have think about, like for example, there was the other types of viruses that were there. Like for example, this is there, these viruses that we have like that. There are a couple of more viruses which had been which has was available. Like for example, you have the web scripting virus. So web scripting virus that you have is primarily where you have these web scripts getting executed. So web scripting virus, again, primarily across, it impacts your web browser, right? So if you see when you're using your web script, your web browsers and all, then what happens is a lot of times, they would be impacting that causing an, impact to your web browsers. And, because a lot of these browsers might be open to vulnerabilities, right? So this web scripting virus will be trying to impact them, right? Then you also have the, based on this web scripting viruses, you also have the browser hijacking that would be done. So what happens in the browser hijacking kind of virus? The computer virus would be trying to change the settings on your browser, so they will try to hijack your browser. Through your browser, they want to take control of your systems. So all your, the browser favorites that you have. So these browser favorites, the URL and all those things on the website, that could be changed it. It's like, for example, it is able to steal data, it can ask for some ransom. All those kind of things is something that I can start doing that using my browser hijacking, right? Then there is a resident virus that I can create. So just like you have seen the movie Resident Evil, you might have seen that, how I want to bring in someone internally and then I can start spreading it as part of my entire, right? So this is more very specific, dedicated across your, let's say, for example, you have the virus getting access to your computer memory, your RAM, and it will try to impact, so you can see there is a resident virus that will come in, it will remain dormant unless if there is a specific action that the user is trying to do. So when it becomes, active, when it becomes, kind of active, and then it will start impacting. So that's a more of a resident kind of a virus. Then you also have direct action virus. So direct action virus is more where uh, there is a specific direct action payload that will be impacted immediately. So these will be also a specific thing, but it's again an action-based kind of a virus that you would say. There is a specific action, that uh, creates, or there is a action that has been taken that impact that it triggers, or that basically triggers this entire virus in action, right? So that is another kind of a virus that you can see. Like this, we have different types of this viruses you have that can be useful. And so there is entirely, so once even if you start understanding what are some of these, so there are different viruses that you can see through which it could be through your email attachments, through your downloads, even your downloads that you have, even your, the medias that you will be having. So they would be basically trying to have. So how basically you identify if these viruses are there in your machine? So what are some of the ways to identify? Like even you know, when you start identifying there will be some kind of a virus in your machine. So first is you start seeing some kind of pop-ups, automatically, ads or websites and all that is coming in. Like for example, the adwares and all, something that you will be seeing. But that is one thing. Then you keep on seeing that your home page is getting changed automatically. So every time that you might be seeing that you might have not changing it, but there is a default page that has now been changed. Then similarly, you can see that there are certain kind of outbound emails that has starts getting out to people to entire you have entire strange people or new people through your machine, through your email account. You can see that emails are now being get sent, right? So that is one of the time. Then memory utilization increases. You might be not doing any kind of a heavy loading, high load task, but you will see that the memory utilization suddenly keeps on increasing. So your machine might be running out of memory and all. So most often times you will be starting to see these out of memory error messages and all. Quite often you will be seeing. So performance wise, there is a kind of a slowness that you will be able to see, right? So performance slowness you can see. Then you will be able to see that sometimes some unknown programs will be starting as well. So these unknown programs might be starting and might be opening some other programs. So that kind of things will be happening. Sometimes you will see that the password changes might be happening, right? So you will see that some of your passwords might be changing abruptly and all. So all those kind of things also without you not having a knowledge and all, that might be also happening. Then some frequent error messages you will keep on saying, right? So there are certain kind of basic function, you will be seeing that there are certain kind of frequent error messages you will be getting opening or using these programs you will be trying to get. So this is some of the other things. So I was mentioning certain examples of these viruses, right? So we saw one example which is primarily your the entire Stuxnet kind of an example. Like this, there are other examples of viruses that have been popular or which had happened in the past. Some of these examples, like so Stuxnet was one we discussed. Then there have been certain other examples that has happened. Like for example, somewhere in the 1988s, right, there was a kind of virus which was a modest worm. So this was a more like a self-replicating program that started spreading to the entire machines, so slowing down or it was crashing many machines. So that was one other example. Then there was a virus which was Nimda virus. So somewhere in 2001, this virus, started targeting your web servers and machines, so which were having your MS Office, Microsoft Office, and Microsoft Windows operating system. So through that it was. Then there was a virus which was I Love You. The name itself was quite funny, but primarily this was a more like a virus that was spreading across via email, so there was like a left confession that was being used. And because of which, everyone was falling through prey to it. Normally, like these days, what a lot of these scams they keep on doing fake profiles, AI profiles and all, right? So that was another popular somewhere in early 2000s. You saw that, this was impacting or infecting. Then you have SQL stammer or SQL slammer for that matter. You can say was one of a computer one that, you was using a vulnerability in your MS SQL server. So in this week, there was a kind of a network congestion that was happening. There was disrupting some of the internet services. In 2003, around that time it happened. So that was another kind of a, another kind of a virus that was there. Then you also have CryptoLocker, which was more recent, where, this was more like a Trojan kind of a virus that was there. So it was infecting, all the files and was trying to have like a ransom, right? So it was more like a ransomware, where ransom amount was being asked, than cryptos, Bitcoin's currencies are being getting exchanged. So this is one area where there was a lot of viruses, that was trying to spread and trying to take, causing financial losses for the attackers. Then there was another virus, Configure. So Configure somewhere in 2008, it tried to explore some of the vulnerabilities in the Windows operating system, and it created a massive botnet. It causes a lot of infection somewhere in that. Configure was one popular one. Then Tinba somewhere in around 2012. So this was again like a Trojan, it was primarily targeting a lot of financial institutions. It was trying to steal the login credentials and all, right? So that was another thing, banking informations and all it was trying to steal. Then other one which was Welshia back in 2003, there was a kind of a worm that removed, it exploited a kind of a vulnerability in the systems and created a lot of network congestion. So that was another, thing that happened. Then there was Slayer, kind of, you can say that it was a more like specific or operating system specific. So it was or for the Mac OS, like so. This was where in 2018 your Mac OS vulnerability was being identified, so it was primarily spreading through kind of a fake softwares, and then any kind of software updates and downloads, primarily for your Mac OS, it was trying to explode that vulnerability and it was trying to spread. So these were some of the, viruses that being identified, right? So that is some of the things that you'll see from a virus perspective, some of the examples of these viruses that are there, right? Now, each of these viruses has a specific, specific type, and that there was specific ways of how to deal with these kind of things, right? So few of the ways, how you would be able to, remove the viruses, or how do you identify these viruses and remove them. So one of the means that you can remove these viruses, computer viruses, is primarily through, how you can, what are the preventive steps that you can take in. So first is one of the very important ways to have a antivirus, right? So it's one of the very easier methods. You can have an antivirus program. Let's say, for example, you don't have any good understanding of what is designers and this and that, more details. So what you try to do is you get an antivirus. It's more like a if there is any kind of a virus, so you'll go and take the medicines rather than trying to understand what is this virus, understanding the structure and all. You know that if I take this vaccine, then I would be, protected against. It can start looking into, it can start scanning your body and start fighting against that virus. So that is what you do. The antivirus is like that medicine. It can start fighting against that virus from spreading, right? So what it does is it can scan your machine, it can know what are these ones which are there, and then can start showing it up to you, and taking your confirmation can remove it also. There are some things that it will be removing by default without your confirmation, and there are certain things where it requires your confirmation to happen. So that is the first thing that it does. Second thing that you can do is you try to disconnect from your machine or your internet. So this is one of the very important things which a lot of experts they say that since these viruses might be using the internet connection to spread and all, it might be best to disconnect this internet. They when you're removing this virus, so that can avoid any further damage from happening. Right? Then these viruses might be also antiviruses might be also trying to remove, and you there might be some kind of temporary files which might be there. So sometimes what happens is there might be certain temporary files that might be getting created by these viruses. So removing this temporary files also acts as a one of the step for the removing and deleting this. So you can see that deleting some of these temporary files can also release these viruses. You want also plan to delete some of these temporary files, right? So that is one thing. Then other things that a lot of experts they suggest is to, have or execute your machine in your safe mode. So normally safe mode is a mode where there are very limited features and limited capabilities that works, right? So when you reboot your machine in your safe mode, all the functionalities, all the components doesn't work, so only the critical ones which might be helping you to work in a standalone kind of a mode, right? So what happens is this also is a more effective method. It can start inhibiting the virus from executing, from running. So that is till the time you are able to remove it completely, it can stop the spread completely, right? It will help it to avoid it to spread further, right? So that is one thing that you can do. Then you can uh, keep on frequently running these antiviruses. So what you can do is there's a lot of these antiviruses might be running in a stealth mode where in the background you might not be even understanding or you might not be even aware that they are working, but primarily you can see that they might be working. So these antivirus scans and all on a frequent basis, they are being scheduled, they keep on executing. And then there is also they are working in a stealth mode. So you'll not even understand that there is an antivirus that is working in the back, but the moment there is a virus that is detected, it immediately gives you a pop-up, right? So that is also that's the reason you should not stop that antivirus. And when you start stopping that, it will start giving you that increases your risk. So it might be using some certain capacity of your machine's machine memory, but then what it does is it keeps your machine, it keeps protecting your machine from any kind of a damage, any kind of an issue, right? So that is what it also does, so that is what you also do. You try to try to um, keep on running on executing these scans and running this, right? So then you also try to delete or quarantine the viruses just to not them to spread further. So once you are identifying the virus, obviously you don't want them to be there in your machine. So you try to delete them. You try to quarantine this virus. You will try to isolate this from the rest of the machine or net from the network so that it can avoid any kind of a further damage. You try to reboot your machines after removing the virus to see that there is sometimes what happens is these viruses might be removing some of your system files, and because of which you might see that your machine will stopped working. So sometimes rebooting helps you into reinstating the well-known state. So that is one thing that you do. Sometimes the files which are deleted are being restored, right? So that you do. So restarting the machines, restarting your browser, and updating your browsers and operating system on a frequent basis also. So normally there are patches, there are updates, frequent updates that you can see gets released by the operating system owners, right? This will also help you to fix any kind of vulnerabilities that might be there in your machine. So that is also you try to use it for as a preventive steps. So these are something that you will be avoiding. Now, this is all how you'll be able to remove, and this is primarily your preventive steps or your removal steps. Once it's being identified, you can say that these are will be removing. Now, one of the very important aspect that you'll see is the learning or training. So, providing training on these aspects, what are the do's and don'ts is something that is very much important. Now, a lot of time we are not aware of it, so we can only become aware if we listen, if we can undergo certain kind of trainings and make ourselves aware of these things. What is the only thing that that can stop us? So first thing is to be aware, try to get ourselves knowing what should be the do's and what should be the don'ts. Second thing is you will see that we will try to have these antiviruses and all installed, and that is more like a recommendation. Obviously, we cannot fight them. It's an unknown enemy for us, right? We don't know how they are and all, but we have experts who know these viruses and can help us. So that is where these antiviruses could be useful. And then couple of things that as part of the training, which a lot of times, which even you feel that if I have the antivirus, I can keep on go and keep on opening a lot of things. So that should not be the case. So only open from trusted sources. So if you have trusted sources, trusted websites, and email attachments and all, so that's the reason when you see you keep on at when you see this kind of a something where even sometimes the antivirus is not aware of. So what they said is this is from an untrusted source. I do not have anything. So are you sure you want to open? Because it might be not that would be good because there are definitions and all, and there are so many websites around, right? It is not possible that the antiviruses might be covering or having a good knowledge of all of them. So what they do is the only thing they can say is they don't have any good idea about it, but they want to warn you against from doing it so that it should not be, impacting or creating any kind of an issues, right? So that is where you don't open any of these attachments and all from any non-trusted kind of sources. So that is also what you do. You try to open this, only these files and these attachments from trusted sources. The other ones should be avoided. Then the other thing that you can do is you keep on updating your antiviruses also on a frequently basis. That is also very much important because they have new definitions and these updates coming in. So you keep your operating system updated, you keep your antivirus updated, right? The programs updated that will able to resolve the vulnerabilities which might be there, right? There could be certain kind of websites that you need to block. So sometimes a lot of these websites will uh, get are part of an ad programs and all. You keep on seeing them coming up, and that would be impacting your thing. So you try to avoid or block these websites so that they are not being opened anyhow. Even by mistake, also it's not been opened. You do that. Try to avoid any pirated and piracy softwares and all, because what happens is this piracy softwares are given for free. Nothing is free because you start feeling that it is free, it would be useful, because you'll see that there would be ads, there would be adwares, or there would be some kind of malware that will be available. So you'll see that try to download it from authentic sources, from official stores and all, where they would be there is a very less chance of them getting or having any kind of vulnerabilities and these, right? That is there. Then you keep on keeping your eye open is something that is important because you cannot cover everything, right? So let's say, for example, you become aware that after putting all these controls also still there is a thing, like for example, you might not be contacted directly. You will see that someone else is sharing, a person who is known to you, they are sharing something file, and then you open it up. So, and you don't even realize that that person's account might have been compromised. So you also need to be remain aware of what is happening. So let's say, for example, if someone is trying to share you something which all of a sudden, all one fine day there was no conversation and they have shared a file. So normally these attackers, they try to keep a check of what is the kind of communication, what is the kind of relationship. Like for example, if someone from the family is sharing one file, so you might be trusting, you will be thinking something authentic, but it is all of a sudden that they have started sharing something and they have all want you to start installing them. So that should be a kind of, you can basically verify them, what is the intent, why it is being shared, what does it contain before you can start doing it. And sometimes a lot of them, when you are executing it or scanning it against your antivirus systems, then what happens, it can still, give you some kind of a idea that if there isn't. So there are multiple steps that you want to do as part of this. It is not that, you are just installing an antivirus and then you can go and clicking on everything and you can feel that the antivirus software should be able to do it. Right. So it's a kind of a collective effort, you can say, that can basically together help you in resolving these aspects, right? So these are some of these components that that will be happening. So these are primarily, you will see these different aspects when it comes to your viruses as a whole, right? So that is with respect to viruses, that is one kind of a malware that you will be able to see, which are your viruses, right? Let me share my screen just a minute. Now, this is one thing that we have seen, which is primarily on the malware side of things. Now, just like that, we have the other types. Now, what are the other types of other categories of malwares that we have, or what are the other types of malwares that you have? So one is your viruses, which is the most common one that we have seen. Like that, you have other different types of malwares also. Now, the other second type of malwares that we have is a category of your malwares, which is primarily your adwares, right? Now, just like your viruses, you also have adwares, where these adwares are, uh, primarily in the form of ads. So you can consider it's like an advertisement, in the form of advertisements, which are there, which is primarily you are using these advertisements for getting or impacting our machine, right? So these advertisement supported softwares or advertisement supported contents that have or malwares that will be there is which is your adwares, wherein what they will be doing is I will be using some kind of an ad, some specific targeted advertising campaigns to enter the machine, the mobile devices and all. I can also redirect the search results to some kind of a website, third party websites, advertisements through these advertisements. And, I can start capturing the user data. I can once the individuals will be entering this details and all, I can also sell this to advertisers, right? So they can start contacting you, they can start pitching you. So all these details which were not there, your user details which were not there, you will start getting. Now, difference between adwares and viruses is adwares a lot of times are not used for only for the wrong use. There are a lot of adwares which you might be using, it might be used for some kind of a legitimate, or there is a kind of an ad that adverts would be useful. You will be seeing that there might be some kind of a it might be used for advertisements also, so that it's not that the whole idea is to infect your systems. There could be a genuine reason that they want to use it for giving you certain better services, and those kind of, also there could be some examples like that also where it could be useful. So that is where the adverse that's compared with your viruses and all, your adverse could be something that would be which could be in one sense it could be useful also in some of these aspects, right? Now, what are these, like, for example, now understanding this, uh, what are these different ways, or what are these examples of some of these adware viruses that you have? So in the past, a lot of these adwares have been, identified, which could be useful. So for example, one of the adwares was the Wantira. The Wantera was more of a persistent kind of an advirus where, it was trying to display some kind of intrusive advertisements and all. So, that was one of the kind of a viruses, adverse that was being there. And it also often would try to disguise, you know, it disguise itself as a legitimate software, and, it would be it would have been difficult to detect, difficult to remove, right? So normally the Wantera was trying to impact most of your Windows operating system in part of it. Then you have Superfish. Superfish was a very popular kind of adware virus, which got bundled with some of your machines. So Superfish somewhere in 2006 was bundled along with your Lenovo machines, right? So So somewhere from 2006 and all, this Superfish was had raised a lot of this privacy and security concerns. So into by 2066 it got there, and by around 2014, around 80 million users have been impacted because of this Superfish kind of an adware. So that was one other popular adware that was there. Now, what this did was, it primarily injected some kind of an advertisements into the web pages. Um, and what it was doing was it was compromising the entire security, the privacy aspect of the encrypted connections. It was exposing this user to potential security risk. So that was another kind of a adware which was popular. Then you also have the DNS unlocker. Another example where this was an adware virus, which was changing the DNS settings. So we have seen the domain name. So this is the DNS settings which are there on my systems. I was trying to change them. I can start displaying, some kind of an unwanted advertisements, and I want trying to redirect my web traffic, you know, to some kind of a potential malicious websites and all. So that where I can start doing this unwanted advertisements and try to redirect this. So using this, I was able to spread, make it spread through my bundle software downloads, and it was becoming difficult to delete also, right? So DNS unlocker was one kind of an example where, uh, it started impacting a lot of these, changing this DNS settings. Then there was another kind of an adware which was popular, which is your conduit search, right? So conduit primarily, if you see, was very popular because this conduit was able to, this adware was able to modify the browser settings. So because of this broad browser settings were being changed, they were showing some kind of unwanted ads, or which was not safe. Some unwanted ads, some pop-ups, and all what started, identifying. The search results were also being impacted to show certain specific search results, which was again part of your ads and all, right? So these were basically coming along with your some of your installed applications, like your bundle. It was being bundled together with some of your software's installations, and it was challenging to completely uninstall it because it was building some of the softwares, right? So that was another kind of adware that was where there. Then there was one adware which was again uh, with respect to which was became popular, which is like your Jolly Wallet. Now, Jolly Wallet was an adware virus where it was trying to inject some unwanted advertisements into the web pages. So ads into the web pages were being injected, and it was tracking the user browsing behavior. It was also distributed to a lot of these browser software and the browser extension. So these were some of the ones popular ones. In addition to that, there were certain adverts that also got popular. So, like for example, you have the Bonzi Buddy somewhere in 1999, where there was a kind of a it was acting like a buddy, for example, as a friend, as a virtual assistant, as a friendly virtual assistant. And what was doing is it was trying to provide any kind of a deceptive advertising. And because it was violating the children's online privacy, there was almost like 75K US dollars that was being fined, because it was basically acting like a virtual assistant with the kids and all for the child and trying to get their details. So that was one thing. Then there was a Gator and Claria adverts that somewhere in 2002 it became there. So it again used a lot of these aggressive advertising tactics. And what it was doing was on millions of machines and millions of PCs and all. This was being installed, and there was no user consent being taken. Because of which it was being installed. So around 36 million machines and all was getting impacted because of this, the Gator and the or the Claria kind of an adware. Then we have the cool web search somewhere in 2008, around somewhere in 2003, where this adware was hijacked a lot of web browsers. It was able to redirect your search results, right? It was able to redirect the search results and it was able to display the ads very easily, right? So around 2000 in three it happened and close to around 300 million, dollars annual uh, revenue generation it happened. It was able to do using these, right? So it hijacked these web browsers and all. It was able to get in this. Then we had the Zango somewhere in 2005, which was again a popular one. There was some kind of a deceptive software practices it was using, and using those deceptive softwares, uh, you know, practices, what it was able to do is it was able to generate revenue. So it was being fined on, some it was given a kind of, a legal action which happened and around $3 million fine was being levied on this organization. So there was an organization 180 Solutions. So they were being then there was an ask toolbar. So there are a lot of toolbars which are there, right? So this toolbar adware happened somewhere in 2011. So, it was very difficult to remove this toolbar. So a lot of users were impacted because people, the ask.com was a very popular website during that time in 2011-12. So you see that it was not possible to remove them. And, it was able to, add somewhere around 100 million users, where this gets installed as part of your as part of your installations, and then it was very difficult to remove them. So, again, Azure.com was being fined because of this kind of thing. Then the firewall episode that happened in somewhere couple of years back in 2017, where you saw that this hardware was trying to uh, do a kind of a browser hijacking. And this browser hijacking was primarily where it has infecting almost like 250 million machines, computers across worldwide, and it was able to, take and overall. So all of this at a high level, at there, each of these is a good example as a use case. You can go through them one by one, but these quite few ones at a high level. I can just mention them. These are very popular ones, which are well-known use case of your adverse, which happen, right? Now, if you see from an adware perspective, now some of these, if you can see the intention, what was the, so how do you define the impact, for an adware, so what kind of impact that these adwares are doing? As we mentioned, a lot of these were not to create any kind of breaking down the system completely and all, but they have a different level of harms, right? So sometimes it is very soft harm, sometimes this would be very actually the whole intention for having those was to bring down, right? So completely from an impact perspective, there are different type impact. So one area is what is the disruption that it is causing and what is the intrusion that it is causing. So one thing that it can see is on some kind of an unwanted ad which you might don't want to see, but you have been forced to see those ads, Like for example, a lot of these free websites and all, you can see that now since you are going through them, there are a lot of these unwanted and intrusive advertisements, pop-ups, and browser redirects that might be impacting your overall experience, the entire user experience. So it might be quite annoying, frustrating. So even if there is nothing that is coming up as a immediate loss for you, but it just creates a more like a an annoyance and all. But you want to live with it because you don't want to pay for a to have a ad free kind of an experience. So that is one thing that it does. So there is no like a financial loss, but it is more like a soft kind of soft kind of an annoyance and frustration that it might be creating. Now there is a direct impact that it might be creating, which is more on your system performance related aspects. So system performance might be, some of these adwares might be consuming system resources like your CPU power, memory, network bandwidth, and all. So there could be a degraded system performance. So this is where it might be causing a more of an actual harm where system resources are being utilized for some of these objectives as compared to your actual purpose for which you are using the machine for. So a lot of times you'll see sluggishness, you'll see slowness, in your machine. Just give me a moment. Yeah, so it might be creating a lot of some of your sluggishness, slowness, and all, some kind of responsiveness issues it might be creating, right? So that is one of the other things that you might be seeing. Then there could be on the privacy and security side of things, as we mentioned, right? Because some of your details might be, getting impacted. Like for example, the advert that we saw, which was more on your, like for example, the Bonzi Buddy, right? So it was creating impact on the children's online privacy aspect, right? So some of these was being impacted, being taken in, without your consent. So you'll see that it would be collecting user data. So this is more, more concerning where the invasion of private privacy might be there. Your data that will be getting collected might be shared, or sold out to other agencies and all. So your data, security is at risk. So this is more impactful, you can say. Then sometimes there is some of these adwares might be changing your browser and system settings as well. So this is again another which might be impactful because your default or the settings that you have specifically, you will see that they start getting modified, they keep on getting changed. So whatever the default home page, the search engines and all which are there, those might get started getting changed, right? So these unauthorized changes can sometimes like for example the ask.com episode that happened, so you will not be able to also like revert it back. So that is another kind of things that you will see, that reverting those settings back might be sometimes difficult. So it might also start creating a kind of the thing or bringing it back to your original state and all will be getting difficult. Then there would be sometimes some kind of unwanted installations that keep on happening, like you might not even understand. But some hardware viruses might be installing some additional software, that would be running in the background and it will be working. So these are also some of the uh, you know some of the things that it might be causing a kind of an impact, right? So these things would be also the impact and the severity will be changing. Sometimes it might be causing a lot of annoyance and all minor disruptions and all, which is okay. You are ready to live with it because it is coming at a at a either free or something else less cost. But there are certain impacts which is very really concerning, like that might be changing the settings and all. So that is one thing that it would be useful, right? So you can these might be some other ways that you can think of how these these adwares would be uh, causing, or some of these adwares might be looking into some of these components that would be looking into some of these things and trying to. Now, what are some of these ways how you can start avoiding them, or what are some of these prevention steps that you can think of? So, so one of the thing that these adwares would be doing it is, like, for example, the legitimate adwares, or those are there. Now, we have something called as, when it comes to these adwares, we have something as a concept called as POPs, or a keyword that you might have heard about, which is your POPs, wherein these are also called as your potentially unwanted programs. So these potentially unwanted programs are, these also gets categorized under your adwares. These are the software types. They might be differing from their purpose, but they users might be or the the people who might be impacting might be unintentionally installing them. They might be bundled with some other machine software and all. So you'll see that they might be delivering some ads and all that might be. So how do you basically remove these different adwares and all? So since we have identified, once we have identified, obviously, these pop-ups and keep on coming in and all, we have known it. So first thing, uh, you try to see that what are some of these things that you know. So one first thing that you will be seeing is how do you be able to remove is by looking at your settings, the settings that you will be there. Because from your operating system perspective, there are certain kind of device system settings that might be causing this impact, right? So looking at your device system settings, so you want to start, rooting out and removing any of these unknown or suspicious programs and all. So you can start identifying, deleting any suspicious apps, which is unfamiliar. Try to look at your device permissions, try to remove or revoke any kind of permissions because you're giving too many access. Some of them might be running at your device startup. So start looking at the device startup settings and see where what are some of them that is, you don't want it to be getting started at a point in time, right? So that is another thing. Then the browsers is something that you can do it. One of the very interesting way how you do it, which as one of a good way of doing it is try to clean your browsers, right? So like for example, uninstalling on browsers and reinstalling, or sometimes it happens is it removes a lot of these ad serving extensions and all. Maybe you might have not. So when you try to reinstall, what happens is you try to remove your cookies, start deleting your browsers and cleaning it up. Removes this a lot of this, your browsing data or cookies and caching and histories, things that you try to, try to remove them. That will help you to remove them also. So browsers, you keep on regularly updating, try to removing, cleaning them, the cookies, the uh, you know, the browser histories, and all those kind of things you do. So that also helps in removing. You try to remove your or update your browsers. Update frequently update your operating systems as well. Right. Then one other thing that a lot of times we miss, but you should be doing it is read your terms and conditions and don't accept everything. Right. So sometimes we say You see these ads like what are these cookie settings, and when we just accept all, so don't accept those cookies because they would be sitting in the back and will try to monitor what you're there, right? So what we use, be very careful when you're trying to have these, do. So you can use an anti-malware tools also, which comes in as a kind of an addition add-on to your antiviruses, machine software and all. It basically is useful. These anti-malwares is something that you might be seeing is could be also helping you. Try to keep your backing up your data as well. So back up your data regularly so that in case your machine is getting impacted, then also it will not in factors, So training is and understanding some of these things is also awareness is also very important. So you try to keep people aware, try to be aware of what you're doing. Each and every action that you do has a kind of an impact, right? So you will not even realize that how did it happen, but a small step that you might have been, you might have done might have, opened up the way for these ads. So that is another key area where you will see this adwares also has one of a kind of these malwares, where they would be useful, they would be creating a kind of an attack. But from an impact perspective, some of them, the impact would be very high. Like for example, these some of these examples that I mentioned, the different use cases or some of these things that appeared in the past. That based on the kind of impact, you can see that all of them, the impact was not very high, but some of them would be was very impactful. Some of the impactful ones which I can just think of further is like, for example, there was a firewall attack that happened somewhere in 2017, where there was a software company in Israel. So this discovered that around 250 million computers and all had impacted, right? So there was a firewall attack that happened, fireball, where it affected your machine. It takes about your browser and then it changes your homepage to a like a fake search engine. So there was a fake search engine like Trotus. It keeps on inserting obtrusive ads into the web pages and all. So this was something that was very impactful because it completely changed the settings. Then there was an episode which was an appearance, which is app search, So you can see that app search together became an app search, right? So this was a program, adware program where, it was also called as like a browser hijacker kind of a program. So this browser hijacker program, where there was a kind of a bundle with a free program, right? So there were so many ads that were being injected into the browser, right? Because of which web browsing was, very difficult, and when someone was trying to attempt to visit the website and all, then it was being redirected to approach, .info. There was a website approach.info. It was getting redirected to that, and it was basically transforming this random text into links, and there was a pop-up. So it basically created a lot of impact in which the your operating system and browser was working, right? So that was another popular adware episode that happened years back, that was creating a kind of an impact in which how your work, entire thing was working, right? So that was another thing. So these were the two ones which are very popular, in that.
So, Saurabh, so as an organization, right, to block these PUPs from being downloaded at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, like we know, like if they got downloaded, like executing or anything is being happened, so we have antivirus or endpoint detections. But from them to be downloaded, like stopping from the download itself, is there anything like we can do the preventive measure?
Yeah, see, what happens is sometimes, we have certain kind of keyword specific websites that as a very secure, aggressive mode of the best way of doing it is in an aggressive mode of, the controls that we can put in. So one of the controls that, few of the controls that normally organizations has is this virus, antiviruses and all of that. But one thing that they do is there are specific domain categories that I will completely block in based on the content that these websites might be content. Like for example, your songs specific or religious specific contents might be there. Or let's say for example, you have free contents like e-commerce portals, or sometimes you can also block certain websites, which is like for example your knowledge article, knowledge websites like Stack on the Roots and all, like so knowledge websites or training websites, so free websites which are there. So what happens is you create a list of all this, which are the ones which the domains that you don't want to go. So like for example, news agencies or news channels are also things which can, can trigger you. So you only allow couple of them which are trusted, which doesn't have any of them things. And sometimes you take a subscription for them to, identify which are the websites and all which can give you that kind of confidence, right? So once you do that, so any link that gets categorized in these categories or gets blocked in, so you will not be able to do that, open them. Second thing that you do is you disable downloads, right? So whenever you try to download something, right, it will be completely disabled, right? So it could be a genuine content also, but primarily the downloads, this is primarily at a that you defined a kind of a control, the role-based control that you define or an approval maker checker functionality you define, right? So anything that you are downloading will not get downloaded on your machine, right? Unless and until it gets scanned completely or there is a request you raise for that download and it will be going through that specific team who would be verifying those. So if it is more file based and all, so you'll not be downloading some of these aspects. Only downloads that you would be allowing is maybe through your email attachments and all, right? So even the email attachments that would be coming in, they would needs to be scanned first before the downloading. So even whenever you're downloading something, that the antivirus is able to download, verify these email attachments and scan it and give you a confidence only then it will get. The third thing that you do is the installation, right? So installation access is something that you will disable. So if there is no installation access, even if the file has been downloaded, anyways, it will not be getting installed. So that is another step that, if you want to install, you will have to reach out to your, the IT support team and all who has your, SMG team, primarily your service management, user teams, who the service management group teams who might be doing these installations. So these are a couple of things that you do that will, right? So then this is more the preventive ones. Now the browsers are primarily, you will disable all your add-ins. Like one of the things that you do is these extensions that you have, like for example, Chrome extensions and all, you will not allow them to happen. Your Play stores and all, you will not allow them to, install anything from these Play stores or the Microsoft Windows stores and all. The Chrome extensions and all, you will disable it. So what happens is anything that needs to be installed and all, there is a request that goes through, and then there is specific reason, there is a specific approval that happens, business justification and all. And then there is a kind of a proper security assessment that goes through after which it gets, done. So these are all the preventive methods that happens. But see, one thing that it happens that even after you build in all these things, there are so many websites you cannot control all of them, right? See, these would be controlling anything, but let's say for example, even after doing all this, there might be some kind of websites which you might still not be able to control, right? But if you have these controls in place, like the downloads are being disabled, the installations are, even if I'm able to download these websites, the moment if I'm clicking on a website which is redirecting it, those websites I will not be able to open it because it is already blacklisted using these keywords and they are based on the content that it has. So these are some of the controls, making. So this is more of very, you will say that this might be in a very restricted or a very high security kind of an environment that I'm creating. But yes, there are critical organizations like defense organizations, space research organizations, financial organizations, and all. So in these kind of organization, this level of controls has to happen because the impact will be very high, as compared to startups or and all, which are like small organizations. These kind of organizations needs to have these controls built in together. It's a combination of these things that you will see that will be belonging in together. And then there are regular patches and updates, regular scans and all that keeps on happening. So these are some additional steps, as we have seen earlier also. These are the also some of the things that you try to do. So you create awareness, you make people aware of it. You run a lot of these, simulated attacks, simulated as in like, dry runs that you run and see that whether people are aware of it, whether people are, making people aware of it. So on one side, I'm trying to put in those controls, but at the same time, I'm trying to make people aware of what are some of the things that could be impacting.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a combination together. You think about all of them and you try to implement it together. So normally what happens is, how do you basically certify these controls, right? So there are agencies basically which comes and audit and then also give you a kind of a security certificate that tells you, whether the system is foolproof in that sense. In case if they find certain vulnerabilities or gaps in this, because what they do is normally they have certain kind of website checks that they will be running against. So they run against them and try to verify whether this is working or there are some additional preventive steps that needs to be brought in. So that is all together, they get certified from them and that gives us kind of some level of assurance also.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think let's take a small break now. 10-15 minutes break we can take now. And then we'll cover with the other types of malware categories. So we have just started, we have covered two. But again, very interesting. This topic itself is very interesting because all the different modes, you'll be able to see the different types and some examples. That has happened in the past, right? So each of these, the types that we have, 12, 13 types we have. So we will go through each of them and we'll see, how it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, let's take a 10-15 minute break and then we'll come back and then. Okay, sure. Thanks. Thank you.
Oh, okay. पकड़ते हैं हम. Certainly.
Yeah, okay. Welcome back. Just give me a minute. We'll get started.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I think we'll get continued. Now we have seen the two types, primarily your the adwares and the viruses that seen under your the category malware. The third category, which is we lastly have seen in the previous session also, is more like your ransomwares, right? So again, just as the name suggests for ransomware, let me start sharing my screen.
It's
So
fine. It's
ransomware, yeah, yeah. So ransomwares primarily you will be using a lot of, as the name suggests, right? So it will be using some kind of an encryption, and they will basically uh, try to impact your system, access to the system, access to the applications and all. It will try to do that till the time they are getting some kind of a ransom amount from where it would be able to reduce that, right? So that is where your ransomwares are, will be there, where they are typically the attacks that are being carried out. So typically they will be using some kind of a Trojan and all. They would be trying to enter your system. There could be some kind of a malicious attachment. There could be some physical embedded links and all, which might be there. And the whole idea is once they are entered into the systems, they will try to block either permanently, the access to their underlying data, or till the time you are able to provide any kind of they will say that we will damage your files, we will damage or bring down your systems and all. So they have something, this is another way of, you can say that, crypto viral kind of you know, they are trying to extort money from you, right? So in a more of a crypto viral kind of thing. So that is also what it does. And now you'll see that they will be encrypting the files, the files, they will try to make it inaccessible. And you will see that recovering the files and all becomes, once we have encrypted, and then decrypting that becomes much difficult, because for that they will ask you to pay for an amount and all. So normally this extortion attacks that you will be there, unless and until you are able to get this decryption keys and all, the control will not be left, So you will be seeing that something it will be there. Now, normally these ransoms and being are paid in the form of digital currency like bitcoins and all, so which is very difficult to diagnose and all. So cryptocurrencies are very highly used when it comes to these ransom attacks, because it is very difficult to trace them, so, and because of which they can use it, these kind of things. So you'll see that Trojans and all are very highly, something. These are very high popular in these kind of scenarios. Started very early during the initial, in the initial days also it started somewhere in the 1980s and all. So at that time there was a Trojan which was like your AIDS Trojan. So the whole of this, it was one of the very initial days of these ransomware attacks, and over the years it has kept on increasing. These kind of an attacks have kept on multiplying, kept on increasing, because the attackers have started using these different types of, methods like cryptocurrencies coming into. So it becomes more easy to, start, getting some of these implemented and all, right? So crypto viral extortions and all started getting more popular, right? And normally this how this entire works, as I mentioned. So there is a kind of a when this entire attacker, right? So there are two main components, right? So you have an attacker, you have an attacker, you have a victim, right? Now, what primarily does is this attacker will be trying to attack the victim. So what they do is they try to generate a kind of a key pair, and they try to place this corresponding key in the enough kind of a malware. So this malware will be getting released. Now, what happens is this victim unknowingly will be trying to install this, trying to get this, and because of once this is getting installed, there is a kind of a symmetric key encoding that happens. So using this, what it will do is it will try to encrypt The victim, all the data of them will be getting encrypted. There will be a key that would be being used. There would be an encryption key that would be used, and sometimes it is in the form of ciphertext. Some could be in the form of some other, algorithms that would be using, based on which, the encryption would happen. So all the data gets encrypted, and you'll not be able to access the data. So based on that, once it gets encrypted, there is a kind of a confirmation that is being sent to the attacker that this has been happened. So the key is something that is only available with the attacker. So this ciphertext, and it is being confirmed to the attacker. So the attacker has these keys that will help you to decrypt this message. So now what this attacker does is the attacker will be reaching out to you and will asking you for a ransom amount. Only when you send this, that you receive this amount, this key would be something that would be shared that can basically now what they also do is they put some kind of a logic which basically can destroy in case the keys are not entered correctly, after a certain attempts, it basically can create a self-destruction code. So this self-destruct code basically will destruct the underlying data also. So based on that, it becomes people will not want to try with a different combination because there is a very high chance that the data might be getting lost. So at the end of the day, what you do is you try to pay that amount so that you can get the key and the data is not getting lost. So once the attacker receives the payment, they will share this code, which will help in deciphering the text, and it will be giving that the victim the original data back. There might be it would be completing that entire cycle of how the attack has happened, how the entire component happened, how it is being alone. Now, one important way, one thing that happens is even after the attack, sometimes it happens that, even after you try to copy the data and all, you still might be not, because in the first place, your antiviruses might have not been able to identify that, in case if there was a malicious attachment, the antivirus was not able to. So sometimes because of some kind of a vulnerability which is there in your antivirus or, these softwares, it was being compromised, right? So you'll see that since the Trojan was able to get installed, maybe into the malicious attachments or for phishing emails and all, there is a very high chance that it can still be there in your system in some kind of fashion, right? So normally you try to work. Normally after the ransomware attacks, has your system needs to be sanitized completely, unless and until if it is not being done, it will you cannot give 100% assurance that that sometimes it happens even after the decryption or even after the keys have been removed. There is a very high chance that there is a vulnerability that could still be exploited further by the attacker, because they can keep on impacting and keep on trying to identifying these running these attacks over and over again. So that is one another thing, critical aspect when you see these kind of an attacks. Your system and all might have to be completely sanitized. That will be basically helping in removing these kind of attacks. So what are these different types of over the periods, right? What are some of these different types of ransomwares that has happened, and what are some of the examples that good examples in the past that basically tells you what are these some kind of these ransomware categories that you have. Now, some of the key attacks that has happened, over the years. This is one over a period of time. You'll see that a couple of these attacks have happened in the past. So, what are these attacks? What are some of these attacks that has impacted the systems, and what kind of impacted that they have created? We'll spend some time to understand them, and that will give us some good understanding. So, one such attack that happened in the past was primarily your bit payment kind of an attack that happened. So BitPaymer happened somewhere in 2017, right? So the CrowdStrike Intelligence was trying to track this original BitPaymer. In the first iteration, the BitPaymer ransomware attack was, trying to had a ransom demand and a URL, which was more like a Tor-based payment portal. Now, this payment portal included the title Bitpaymer along with a specific reference ID. There was a Bitcoin wallet and a contact email address also that was in there. So that was one kind of Bitpaymer attack that happened. Then somewhere in 2013, there was a kind of an attack that happened, which was more like your crypto locker. So this crypto locker, somewhere in 2013, with cryptocurrencies getting a lot of popularity. So there was a business class which was Game Over Zeus, but this Game Over Zeus botnet, had infected millions of infections, had, millions of infections, and they developed their own ransomware and deployed as a subset of their botnet infected systems. And this ransomware where for victims was a very small amount, like $100 and $300. So, they even provided different types of digital currencies, like you had a Cashew, you had PaySafe, you have Bitcoin, right? Different of these digital currencies was being accepted as part of a ransom amount. And since it was at a very small denomination, sometimes we thought what happened was it will impact many, but the amount is less. So you might not be reporting a lot of these things. It gets unnoticed. And it's unless and until people start reporting it, a lot of these attacks remains unnoticed. Then you also have dark side. So dark side was an attack that happened. There was an e-crime group that was called as Carbon Spider. So Carbon Spider primarily, this dark side operators primarily focused on these Windows machines. And initially they started with Windows, then they also moved into your Linux machines also. They had these environments running, some of your hypervisors, the VMware hypervisors were being used. And they were able to steal these credentials of these hypervisors. So somewhere in that, there was the FBI came out publicly and then they said like there was a dark side ransomware attack, that was being reported by them, where 100 GB of data was being stolen, by some an organization, right? So the organization almost had to pay $5 million US dollars, to take out that data from the dark web. Then Dharma was one other incident that happened, So since 2016, around there was this ransomware attack as a service, the RAS model that developers primarily, try to sell to some criminals, so who were they unable to create out and carry out an attack, right? So what happens is this original author of Dharma primarily they released this original source code also, and Dharma primarily was marketed and sold by these companies to multiple of these criminals. And one of them, somewhere in 2020, they basically have it. So there was a kind of a ransomware that happened that was your Phobos ransomware, which was being, uh, primarily was likely being inspired by Dharma also. You can say that. Then you also have Doppelpaymer. So Doppelpaymer primarily was somewhere targeted in 2019. So at that time, there was one other thing which this ransom was being used, similar to the original Bitpaymer that was happened in 2017, but Doppelpaymer came out 2000, 2019, and it didn't include the ransom amount, but primarily it also had the URL similar to our Bitpaymer, a Tor-based payment portal, and had a keyword key to identify what is the encrypted key and the data which was there. There were other of these incidents that was being there, like for example, you have Gand, Crab. So again, pinchy spider interactions that happen. There were multiple, so through your social medias and all, through your public social media, publicly available on social media, it was being. So it continued for a couple of years. It was one of the ransomware successes that was, Pinchy Spider was released there was a version of GANCrab which was there. There were a lot of decryption versions later came out as part of it. Then you had Maze as one more example. So Maze was another ransomware, which was targeting a lot of organizations across, right? So there was an affiliated network where Maze developers were able to share their proceeds with different work groups in the organizational networks, right? So they were able to take advantage of all the assets and were able to, move literally from one of these networks to the other. Then you had Medusa's Locker, which is again a very popular ransomware attacks that happened. Somewhere in the early 2019, right? So in 2020, there was a fork called as Medusa Locker, which was primarily a Tor hidden service. So as just like you have the ransomware as a service, these operators primarily had implemented this, and they had been sharing this with the some of the other cyber criminals. Then you have Netwalker, which was written in C++, and it was advertised as a ransomware as a service or as kind of thing, and it was being made popular by the users as part of the group, which was a Circus Spider. So Netwalker was able to encrypt the files on the local systems, map the network drives, network shares, enumerate the network for additional shares and all, and trying to attempt use the security tokens and all, right? So the ransom note was given that a note would be showing that your file has been infected and all, and then you need to pay that amount, right? So those are some of the things. Then you have the other attacks like the NetPetya. It's a variant of your Petya attack somewhere in 2017, which was being identified, which was infiltrating a lot of systems across the globe. So it was primarily using stealthy propagation techniques, so it was able to swiftly move to the other systems. It was able to encrypt the other systems on the organizations. And close to around $300 USD dollars was something that was being asked as a ransomware to, come out of it. Petya initial is the initial version of your NetPetya. So this is somewhere, it was trying to encrypt your master file table, MFT, and you had the master boot record, right? So this master boot record and master file tables were being used, they were encrypted. So because of which it was impossible to access anything on the drive. And there was another exploit that was being used, which was called as MISHA. So let's say, for example, if the PITEA is lacking the privilege and which was necessary privileges that was required to get to MFT, the master file table and the master boot record, MISHA was able to encrypt all of them one by one. Right, so that was one thing which is on Petya. Then we have the Revil or REvil. So REvil primarily somewhere in 2009 was again, you had Pinchy Spider REvil ransomware as a service again, or as kind of a thread where there was it was trying to leak the victim's data to an underground forum. So this was the first time where there was a attackers there was trying to monetize the compromises on some of the service providers, the managed service providers in the US and the China-based access management firm. So that was again an REvil attack, which was a ransomware attack that was there. RIAC is also one as an example. There are a couple of ones which are the other ones which are common. Like for example, you had RIAC. So RIAC was primarily, another kind which was used by a organization which is like your Wizard Spider. So, and we have like Herms RIAC has been only used for targeting your enterprise environments, right? So the RIAC and the Herms ransomware primarily, RIAC was derived from the Herms source code. Herms was another kind of a ransomware attack that where so based on from that only, RIPE was being inspired and it being derived from that. So Herms is more like the commodity ransomware that you had. So on the forums and all, it was being popularized. It was being available for downloads also. So that was also there. So rank ransomware was also, one of the popular ones which was there. Then you had a Samsung based ransomware. So ransomware, Samsung primarily was again, there was a cyber advisory which was Boss Spider. So Samsung primarily had, some unpatched server-side software, that it was being used to enter the environment. Somewhere in 2018, this attack was being launched on Atlanta, Georgia, and around 8,000 employees, city employees were, impacted, where their machines and citizens, they were able to pay their parking water bills and parking tickets and all, right? So they were being provided a common screen as a on their screen, they were impacted and they were not able to go forward with the any transactions they were not able to do further. Then you had the WannaCry, very popular one, WannaCry. The WannaCry, you can also call it as WCry. Some people call it as WannaCrypt. Somewhere in 2017, it happened. There was a mass campaign that was affecting all the organizations, primarily the healthcare organizations. Healthcare related organizations were being impacted, and a lot of these organizations were using your Microsoft Windows, MS Windows. So there was an exploit that was being identified within Microsoft Windows, which was a Eternal Blue, which allowed sharing of files and all. So because of which this opened up that vulnerability was being explored or exposed, and ransom was being allowed to spread using that. Then just like you have a Hive database, there was also another ransomware attack that happened, which was the Hive, which was again a ransomware as a service. So it was targeting the different organizations and businesses specifically. Again, this was more, for example, your healthcare organizations. They are targeted to your healthcare organization.